Good morning and welcome to the Sunday service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Laguna Beach. My name is Noreen Kukkonen and I'm honored to be the worship associate this morning. As you know, we are a hybrid service and we are very grateful for those who managed to put our hybrid services together. Carol Cole serves as our music director, and she is enhancing our spiritual experience with beautiful renditions of our Unitarian hymns, and we're grateful for her presence today. We wouldn't be here on Sunday mornings without the members who have taken on the audio-visual tasks in their very complicated hybrid performance. Today, Pam Floodman and Don West Jr. are diligently working to meet our technical needs. They contribute much time and energy to make sure the videos and slides are uploaded, voices here and there are connected, and backup is available just in case the electricity goes out. So they do a lot of work for us and we appreciate them. And there are many others who know we appreciate them for their efforts to move our fellowship forward. We're an awesome community. And if you're new today, we welcome you and we hope you'll come back. We're a growing community and nothing but good things coming in the future. So we hope to see everyone again. In the Unitarian faith, we accept you for whom and what you are. We're a welcoming congregation with membership open to all who are in accord with our principles, mission, and vision. We gather because we share the same values of mutual caring and spiritual growth. We can help each other to lead a meaningful, purposeful life. As Unitarian Universalists, we embrace 7 basic principles that guide us. Our speaker this morning, who is coming to us from Zoom, is Stephen O'Neill, who will enrich our understanding of how the indigenous people of this area made sense of the world that we now share. The topic relates to our 7th principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. As the nights grew longer in the winter months, the ancient peoples looked to the stars, wondering if the life-giving sun would ever return. Even though as a child, I understood that daylight would return with a new day, I grew up afraid of the dark. I know there must be a few of you out there who had that problem. Raise your hand. Rachel, oh, there's one too. Okay. Yeah, it was kind of a scary time. I always felt okay if I could pull the blankets up to my neck. You know, once I got into the blankets, that's fine, but only provided the door to the closet was closed really tightly. And then it was safe, I could sleep. Hopefully, we've all come to accept the darkness and not fear it like we did as kids, because the longest night of the year is coming really soon, in 2 nights, as a matter of fact. The Reverend Sue Spencer reminds us, these long nights have a purpose. Without times of rest, nothing would grow. With perpetual sunlight, there would be an eternal desert. We need darkness for our own growth. It encourages rest and recognition of our own powerlessness, that we are not in charge of everything after all. Ancient peoples had rituals of their own to save them from the black sky and cold earth. The solstice bells of our gathering music come from an age-old tradition of music and dance to drive away the darkest night. Ancient peoples knew the solstice time at the end of the year signaled the beginning of the next year, and they grew still and waited in their stone circles and forest groves for the promise of the new year to come. The Acjachemen understanding of the solstices was based on their own cosmic vision. Our speaker, Stephen O'Neill, is a cultural anthropologist who has concentrated his studies on the ethnohistory of Southern California indigenous peoples. Mr. O'Neill will review the cosmology of the Acjachemen people and how it affected their everyday life, as well as their art and celebrations. With the winter solstice just days away, Mr. O'Neill will tell us about the Acjachemen's traditional calendar, their timekeeping, and the significance of the winter solstice to the indigenous people whose land that we live on today. To celebrate this time of solstice, when an unclouded sky shines its billions of stars for the longest night, we ask the children to join us. Dara, can you please bring the children up forward? You look in the sky, excitement and recognition, because we know it's going to be a dark night with many stars. We're going to sing a song that I think you'll like. Sing a song. Sing a song.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. When the blazing sun is gone, when the nothing shines upon, then you show your little light. Twinkle, twinkle, all the flight. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky.
It was very nice. We come together on Sunday mornings to enjoy each other, but as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light a chalice in our service as the only symbol of our faith. It is a sign of our search for truth and meaning. Today, Kendra Romans will light our candle. Kendra has been just an incredible help to us on the worship committee, handling, scheduling people, so nicely following up in in ways that are very polite and respectful. And she gets people here. So we really appreciate you, Kendra, and your beautiful kids. Thank you. Our centering thought today is a reflection on the meaning of light. Let us not curse the darkness. Let us kindle little lights. We now will proceed to the Unison Affirmation, where we speak in unison our beliefs as a congregation. For me, they're very significant because I like and need the reminder to strive for my highest aspirations. So please read along when the slides appear. May we be
reminded here
our highest
our
aspirations
aspirations
and
and inspired to bring our gifts
love and
of love
service
and service
altar
to
of
the
humanity.
altar of
May
humanity.
we know once again
May we know
Once again
isolated
that
beings
we are not isolated beings,
in
but
this
but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe,
and to each
to this
other.
community, and to each other.
Community where we find connection, a spiritual community where we find meaning. Ours is a sharing community where our joys are amplified, a caring community where our sorrows are lessened. We take this moment to reflect on our joys and sorrows. If you are in the congregation, in the church at this time, and you choose to light a candle in silent remembrance at any time during this portion of our service, please do that. We will start with the friends on Zoom, and if you have a joy or sorrow to share, we would like to be a support to you. May we remember what our friends have shared today, the people they have named, and the thoughts we hold in silence in our hearts. The Reverend Victoria Weinstein, a Unitarian Universalist minister, invites us to reflect on generosity as our spiritual value. Her words, with slight alteration, applies to us here at UUFLB. Yes, this is the commercial part of our service. So she says, and it's true of us, our congregation is entirely self-governed by democratic process. One of the privileges of our free church tradition is to provide the financial support from among ourselves to sustain and grow the mission of this congregation. Generosity, therefore, is one of the spiritual values that we recognize as central to our personal and our institutional well-being. You're now invited to participate in the blessing of giving. Thank you. The information for checks and online payments is on the slide, but it's also in the email sent to announce the service. If you can support us in any way, we're very grateful. To one another, please stand if you're comfortable to sing our song of thanksgiving.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we
our meditation. Carol, we would like to hear our opening hymn, please.
Noreen, would you tell me which one it is? Because I don't have my iPad working for some reason today. I don't know which one it is. Is it Morning is Broken, or I Know I Can? Somebody help me here.
I know I can.
Thank you. Though days be dark with storms and burdens weigh my heart, though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can't go on. Sorrow heals my soul, burdens make me strong. Though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can't go on. My sister in my heart, my brother in my song. Though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on. And though the journey is long, the destination is near. Though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can't go on. So brothers, take my hand, and sisters, sing my song. When hope awaits every turn, I know we will, I know we will, I know we will go on.
For our meditation this morning, I've chosen a clip from the Reverend Lynn Cox of a Unitarian Society of Denver. It's a longer piece, and you may wish to find it on YouTube, but we'll watch part of it. I invite you to relax. You may want to close your eyes, but the graphics are really pretty. So watch. But she is providing nurturing thoughts for the solstice. Let your mind open up and listen to the Reverend Cox's message for the solstice. There will be a moment of silence at the conclusion.
We pause as the path of the sun reverses, seemingly holding its place for a moment of turning. Let us delve into the gifts of darkness at the winter solstice. We follow curiosity and contemplation down into the cold earth, taking a journey to the world below the surface. Here we find acorns, cached by squirrels and chipmunks, perhaps to be food laid in store, or perhaps to become trees in the fullness of time. We find the burrows of hibernating animals, those who sleep and repair. We find seeds, including some that will not sprout, unless they first wait through the frost and ice. Life finds rest and renewal in the darkness. May those who are weary find comfort. May those who are struggling find meaning and companionship. May those who are injured or ill find recovery. May those who hunger find abundance. Let this be a time of healing. And may the dreams of the dark lead us to share these gifts with one another.
Ancient peoples everywhere on Earth looked at their world and made stories to explain what they saw. In order to appreciate the solstice as Acjachemen saw it, it's important to know their stories. Stephen O'Neill will focus on the cosmology of the Acjachemen and how this vision led them to their understanding of the winter solstice. Stephen has 30 years of experience as a cultural anthropologist in California. His research and written on ethnography, archaeology, and history, concentrating on the ethnohistory of Southern California tribal peoples. He has expertise in the use of mission records for the study of population and social networks, and is familiar with rock art ethnobotany and family reconstruction. O'Neill has archaeological experience in excavation and survey, mostly on Native American prehistoric sites, and also Spanish, Mexican, and American period adobe structures. He's published in numerous journals on topics ranging from the original village place names to cosmology and medicinal plants. He grew up along the Orange County coast and currently lives in Laguna Canyon. We're happy to welcome Mr. O'Neill this morning.
Well, Don, go ahead and show that that first slide, the cover slide. And thank you. But much more informative than my face. And I certainly thank you, Nordine and the congregation, for inviting me back to talk on this and to talk at this time period with the winter solstice coming up in just 2 days from now. Next. And the next after this. What we'll be talking about is the cosmology of the Acjachemen, and then how the solstice event relates to their cosmology. The review is to give the solstice context. And we are speaking of the Acjachemen people. You see on the map here, about in the middle along the coast of a place called Tomok, up Laguna Canyon. That is their place name for Laguna, and is probably their northernmost part of their territory. So they did extend and made use of where we live. Next. So we will be talking about the cosmology which deals with the creation of the natural world and the social world. Earth and sky, the Kamalam, who were born of Mother Earth, and Wiyat, who was the leader of those brothers and sisters. Fortunately, the many aspects of their cosmology and their stories appears in the rock art at the ceremonial sites. We also talk about cosmology and ceremony and of the calendar. So cosmology is star lore and everything else. The world as we know it, as we understand it. One of the phrases that I heard early on, which was, I think, most significant, we think of the universe as what we see through a telescope. And now what we are seeing as we send out spacecraft. To indigenous people, the universe is not out there. It is right here. They realize that they are within the universe. It's not something that's observed. Their creation story is also fairly different than that of many peoples, including what we receive in the Bible. There is not a God who thinks of what he wants the universe to be and then creates it out of his own thought. The universe in the Acjachemen stories and related peoples here in Southern California was an open and seemingly somewhat empty space, except for potential. And this potential was seen as a mist, a white mist. It started to coalesce, but then it dissipated. Like there was something was going to happen, but it didn't quite come about. Then this mist coalesced again, white to gray, a little more substance, but then it faded out again. This happened through several phases until finally that mist coalesced into Father Sky, Okumut Tukumut, and Mother Earth, Tamayawut. Very much similar to yin and yang. Both were needed, both joined to create the heavens and the natural world. Next. This is an image of the creation by a local Native American artist, L. Frank Manriquez, with both Acjachemen or Juaneño and Tongva or Gabrielino bloodlines in her family. This is that separation of Father Sky above, Mother Earth below, that potential mist that's uniting them. And then the creation of the natural world and the social world. What you see there are the Kamalam, the first people born of Mother Earth. These were people of great potential themselves. Some of them are the major mountains that we see, like Saddleback, Mount San Jacinto, Mount Cucamonga. These were brothers, people, sentient beings that watched over the world. There's also deer and stone. These were people at the time, conscious people. Next slide. The Kamalam also became spiritual leaders among themselves. They were chiefs among their own people. And these chiefs would then go on to become the main stars that we see in the sky. Sometimes they're followers, their brothers and sisters, or the surrounding stars of the main stars and became constellations. Wiyat was the last born of all the Kamalam, but he became the chief of them and the most powerful. And he was the giver, as it says, of order. He also helped to feed his brothers and sisters. However, he is also known as the dying god. He was eventually killed by the rest of the colonial for a transgression. And he was killed and cremated. Through the cremation, his heart was freed of the body and became a star. And this was the template for people, human beings, for their death ceremony and cremations. Wiyat himself then became Moila, the moon. And this is the moon that we see, who comes and goes every month. Next. But also with that cremation came ceremony, the first ceremony. The log contains Wiyat's body, but the rabbit is Tobet. And Tobet was the first dancer. And from Tobet came all dances, ceremonial to come. And he's carrying a turtle shell rattle. But also with the death of Wiyat, this was the first death in the universe. And with his death, death came into the world. And so the Kamalam knew they had to do something to survive themselves. And that's when they started transforming themselves into the stars, into the mountains that we see, into rock, sand, deer, coyote. Next. As we are talking about the solstice, it is the heavens that we're concentrating on this morning. These are the Acjachemen names for many of the main stars and some of the constellations. Venus, Antares, Arcturus. North Star is Wolf. Tukmet Ishut. Ishut is the common name for wolf. Wolf was among the most powerful of all the shamans of the first people. The Pleiades down toward the bottom, Jahayim, the six sisters, they're a constellation, and they're one that Coyote always had an interest in. And you'll see Aldebaran just below the Pleiades, chasing after them for eternity. Next. The drawing there is another one by L. Frank, which shows how the transition during the mission period, how the people were being buried at the mission, but there was Coyote taking their souls and transforming them into stars and tossing them into the sky. Next. Many of the beliefs of the Acjachemen are made visible through the rock art at sites throughout Orange County and San Diego County. One of the ones that's most visible is Temet. Next. Temet is the sun. Just so you know, most painting of the rock art in this area is done with red pigment. A friend of mine enhanced this with false colors so you could see it a little better. Temet, the sun, was one of the Kamalam. It was all dark at the beginning. Mother Earth and Father Sky did not have stars and suns and moons in them. So they petitioned to their parents, asking for light, and Temet was born. But he was born among them. So obviously it was very hot and very bright right among their midst. And it was starting to burn the Kamalam. So they got a net, made a net, put Temet onto the net, and heaved him up into the sky where he is now. And next slide. You see that images of the sun are throughout rock art panels in this region. It's a very common element. Next. The concept of cosmology in the universe itself is represented among the local indigenous people in concentric circles. And these circles are shown in many different aspects. The rock art, in ceremonial objects, and in sand paintings. Next. These carved discs are unique to Orange County, actually. They're only found from San Mateo Canyon at the south end of San Clemente, north up to the Westminster area. There's been about 12 of these found. They're about a foot to 18 inches in diameter. And you see the concentric circles, sometimes represented by empty space, the outer edge of the disc, the line in the middle, the interior open area, are all different levels of the universe. And then that space at the top is the north, which is the ceremonial true point, like a North Star. That is the direction of the openings of ceremonial enclosures. Next. Back to the rock art and the rock paintings. You see again these concentric circles, usually 3 circles deep. They're shown, you see them throughout rock art in Southern California. Next. Here you see a line, a row of these concentric circles connected by lines. It's a little hard to see in this image, but you see the 1, 2, 3, 4 going up. There is then lines off to the right connecting another circle off to the right-hand side. It just gives you an idea of how important this image was. It looks very simple, but it contains the entire universe because the ceremonial leaders, the Nota, knew the symbolic background of it. An image like this brings up innumerable knowledge and background to explain the entire universe. Next. Another aspect of the cosmology of the universe is the Milky Way. These are shown both carved, painted, and woven. This is the Milky Way, which is the path to the other world, the world of the dead, and the spirit world within the heavens, where many of the colonial went to live. Next. You see that it could be called a dress. It could be called a kilt. That is part of the ceremonial dress that the shamans and the ceremonial specialists would wear during ceremony and also when they danced. The weaving is a cross hatch. That weaving represents the Milky Way. They wear that with eagle feathers attached. And when they dance in a whirling motion so that very soon that kilt would be extended out horizontally as they twirl around. But you also see the Milky Way represented in the crosshatch, the carving on the steatite bowl that's in the bottom right image. So it was ubiquitous. I mean, that was a bowl that could have been used by women in their cooking. It may also have been a bowl that held the Jimson weed hallucinogenic drink. that the young men would drink when they were being initiated into the religion. And so every time it was used, every time it was seen, it reminded people of their place in the cosmology, of the pathways from this earth into the next world. Next. The sand painting, or Turokhosh. The sand painting is actually somewhat related to the sand paintings you may be aware of that the Navajo had, much more elaborate, but there is a connection from Arizona to here. The sand painting was prepared for the main rituals of the society. First was initiation into the religious mysteries, usually by the young men. Then also when a chief or a shaman died and was cremated, that sand painting was made with a hole in the middle. And eventually, after the cremation, the remains were placed into that hole, and the sand painting was pushed in over on top of it. Next. This is a schematic representation of a sand painting. So you see it included the circular concentric circles representing the spheres of the universe, like you saw in the rock art. But sometimes there would be elements within it, a mound of white ash here, or a line of gray ash in another part. And these represented members of the colonial who were very important in the religion and imparted wisdom to the shamans. Next. Here you see an actual Turokhosh, and you get a sense of the size. This was done almost as at a request of an anthropologist to see what they look like, because otherwise, any person from outside the traditional society would not be present when one of these was made. You see the one at the top left with the tomol, or the hole in the middle. And you see the one at the bottom right, larger, a little different. Every clan made them in their own style. Every clan had their own variation of how to put this together. At the ceremony where the ceremonial specialist or a shaman was cremated, as I said, the cremation was necessary because unless the heart was burned, the soul within the heart could not escape and go up into the heavens to join the stars with the Kamalam. In doing this, though, it did. And they joined the Kamalam, the children of Mother Earth. But you see in the one on the left-hand side, a mound here of ash, or a little circle interspersed. These are elements of the universe represented in mnemonic form. The circles of stars, of the creation, of different constellations, of the Milky Way, of sun and moon. At each of these ceremonies, whether for the boys' initiation or the morning ceremony of a chief, the ceremonial leader of the clan would use this as a teaching tool. He would give a speech reminding members of his group of their connection to the universe, of the creation story, and their place within it. Next. So, the calendar itself, which is where the solstice, the winter solstice, is most related. It was actually a very well maintained, thought out, and relatively accurate yearly calendar. they calibrated the calendar by observing the sun and the moon and stars and constellations. Constellations move throughout the sky throughout the year as the Earth turns. They appear on the horizon, take their place up high in the sky, and then disappear. These were all used, as I said, to calibrate the stars and the calendar. The sun was used to reset the calendar. You see the phrase there, which I'm not going to butcher by trying to pronounce, but the translation is, the sun reaches his house. That is the solstice. And that is when the year starts anew. Go to the next slide, please. And the next. You see that they had a calendar with 5 months in it. The months being based on the actual cycle of the moon. But we know that the moon cycles and the sun cycles don't match completely. They had to skip a little bit. That's why Acjachemen is December and January. Acjachemen starts with the winter solstice, which is partly into a lunar cycle. And then it joins the next lunar cycle until the end of that, and then you go back to using the lunar cycle completely. June and July, Suyutakar, same thing. There is the summer solstice. When May was over, you wait until the summer solstice in June, and then that starts the next month, the next cycle, and extends from what's left of that lunar cycle in June through the lunar cycle of July, and continuing on until you get to the end of November, 1st of December, starts again. Please go back a slide. We have a problem here in Southern California. We live along the coast. This coast can get very stormy, lots of clouds in November and December. You never know when that's going to happen. So you cannot depend on being able to observe the shortest day of the sun cycle. Other places in the desert, where you've got a nice clear view all the time, you can go to one place, observe where the sun comes up and sets at the shortest time period on a period of on a set of rocks or mountaintops. And there are observatories like that scattered throughout Southern California, starting in the Santa Monica Mountains and out into the Mojave Desert. Here, not so much. You can't depend on it. Fortunately, there is a little bit of wiggle room. There's about 3 days when it's a little hard to tell, was this the shortest day? Was this next one the time when the sun was up the least amount of period? With a 3-day wiggle room, you can still accurately restart your calendar. However, just to the north of us, the Chumash in Santa Barbara County, their ceremonial people really wanted to know. It was very important to their ritual calendar to have that day exact. Therefore, they came up with these devices that you see on the upper right. They carved these stones, and you see, again, sun symbolism painted onto these stones with a hole through the middle at an angle. They knew the proper angle that the sun was from the earth for the solstice, the winter solstice. That is the angle that they put into the opening within that stone, so that when they put a rod through it and laid the stone flat onto the earth, and they knew where there was flat earth, anyone with a bit of water can tell if you've got a flat surface, because the water and gravity will tell you if it's not. Then at the angle that rod is stuck is the proper angle for observing the sun at its shortest time period. So there was a way of getting around it. Let me just say that, oh, sorry, go forward. Back to the months. I was telling you how the calendar was used ritually. The members of the ceremonial specialists of each clan each year would meet with the specialists and shamans of all the other clans in the region. And they would set out a calendar of all the ceremonies that were to come for the following year. There was, a limited population. People would come to an annual morning ceremony or the boys' initiation. Each of these major ceremonies would include everyone from a clan and everyone who was related to that clan by marriage. And also, each clan had a reciprocity system of using ceremonial specialists from another clan. So a girl's coming of age ceremony, the boys' initiation into the rites of the religion, the annual mourning ceremony of everyone who had died the past year, were not held every single year by every single clan. And so they would divvy up among the different clans and villages over a region who would have these ceremonies that year, and then everyone else would join with them. So the calendar was used to determine where and when the mutual ceremonies would be held, and so everyone would know where and when to come together. That is the way that the calendar was used ritually. In terms of the social life and in terms of the natural world, the ceremonial specialists also directed hunting and harvesting. When was the time to start hunting deer? When was the time to start gathering acorns or pine nuts? They had to make sure that the resources were being used properly, that people just didn't go out there and start harvesting willy-nilly and then not leave enough for everyone else in the region. Also to direct where they would go, which bunches of, let's say, the cactus pear, which stands of the grasses will be used this year, while the other areas were left fallow for the next year. And by using the ritual calendar, religious sanctions were brought into this harvesting schedule. And so again, that's how the calendar, the months, and the constellations were used to order this type of work. Next. That carries us up to the solstice and the place of the solstice within the cosmology and the lives of the local people. These are some references I would recommend if you want to do look up more of this yourself. And this PowerPoint is being left with the church. And so anyone who wants to look at this again and study it, and not go so fast maybe, is welcome to do that. Also, if you have questions that you would like to ask of me, please leave them with Nordine and she can get them to me and I'll see what I can do to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Stephen. Very interesting. I particularly like the idea of our souls becoming stars. I've known in passings in my own life that when a personality disappears with death, it just can't go away. And the idea that it's in the stars is a really beautiful thought. Thank you. All right, our closing hymn today is number 38, Morning Has Broken. So please join in singing. Most of you probably know this song, so enjoy.
Please join me. Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the sleeping, praise for the morning, praise for the spring, fresh from the word. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where God's feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light, Eden's all play. Praise revelation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day.
Thank you very much, Carol. As always, it's a beautiful thing to hear you play. Our chalice extinguishing will happen at this point. Unitarian minister Wendy Bartell suggests, rather than fearing the darkness, let us find rest there in the beauty that is present in the quiet depths, where the still and small voice just may emerge if we would but pause and listen. As the earth journeys and we head into winter, may we allow some time of hibernation from the habits that harbor hatred and hurt and harm. As we conclude this service, please stand if you are able and join us as we sing, Let There Be Peace on Earth.